to the Thought Snob Podcast. I'm Paula Swope. Let's get snobby. Until my guest today came along, I had never heard about vestibular disorders. But I have listened to people complain about dizziness and vertigo. Now, those are common symptoms of vestibular disorders, so if you or a loved one have experienced symptoms of this nature, this episode might be highly beneficial. Etta Sundberg had been having bouts of spontaneous vertigo for a few years, nothing debilitating. But on January the 5th, she collapsed in her home and was taken to the ER. They said she was fine. A few weeks later, she was diagnosed with vestibular migraine and assumed PPPD. Now, PPPD stands for persistent postural-perceptual dizziness. Since Etta's health event on January 5th, she says she's never been the same. She's experienced symptoms 24/7, but she believes there's hope and that she will get her life back. Although right now she's okay, there was a time when she entertained the option of dying with dignity, and we're going to talk about that today. Connecting with others with vestibular disorders has saved Etta's life, and I'm very grateful to have her on the show today. I know that this episode will forever change someone's life somewhere. So Etta, thank you so much for being here. Oh my goodness. I'm not even sure where to begin, because when I started researching these disorders, I was flabbergasted. I've got some notes here about the research that I found, and so I'll just kind of jump in with that. Based on what I found, more than 35% of U.S. adults aged 40 years and older, which equates to about 69 million people, experience vestibular dysfunction at some point in their lives. But many of them go on to develop a chronic vestibular disorder. So would you just talk about these disorders and just educate us on about what they are?
Yeah, so that percentage is very high. A lot of people, especially elderly people, have something called BPPV. And what that is where the crystals inside of your ear that are responsible for balance become dislodged and they sort of like float around in your head. And that makes people fall to the ground. It makes people have really bad dizziness. And that's whenever you have true vertigo. Now, vertigo and dizziness are different things. Vertigo is where you have the sensation of you and everything around you is spinning. Dizziness is off balance and just sort of like a vague feeling. So with BPPV, you get full vertigo. You usually drop to the ground. And the thing with BPPV is it is easily treatable. I say that like with a grain of salt, but there is a head movement called the epilay maneuver, which they can do on your head, and it puts the crystals back into the ear canal, like where they go, and then your symptoms level off and you become normal again. With my situation, which is much more rare, with vestibular migraine and PPPD, they are two different things. And then you have Meniere's disease, and Meniere's disease deals with the fluid inside of your ear. There's like a disbalance of fluid, and you also can drop to the ground, and that's a chronic permanent condition that you'll live with for the rest of your life. And then vestibular migraine, I don't like to use the word migraine a lot because it sort of undermines what the condition actually is, because a lot of people think that migraine is a headache. And in my case, I don't have a headache. And it's very strange, but I don't have headache, which was why when I got my diagnosis, I was so confused. I was actually arguing with the doctor. I was like, you don't know, like, this isn't right, and he's like, I promise you, this is what's going on. You have vestibular migraine before you ever even have symptoms. So a lot of people can have like vestibular symptoms from childhood, and that's car sickness, seasickness. motion sickness, things like that. That is vestibular in itself, like motion sickness. You can also have sensitivity to light. You can have sensitivity to smell. You can have sensory issues. And those can be linked to vestibular, all different types of vestibular disorders, but especially vestibular migraine. I had these warning signs from childhood. And I even had what is called Alice in Wonderland syndrome, which is where you feel like you're living outside of your body. And the author Lewis Carroll, it is assumed that he had a vestibular disorder and probably wrote the book during a vestibular episode.
That is wild.
It's wild. You can hallucinate. You can, like, your reality is completely different.
And you experienced this when you were little?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Do you
And I
remember
didn't
what
know how
age?
to articulate it. Oh God, from when I was, from as long as I can remember, maybe even from as young as 5 or 6 years old.
Wow. Okay.
And I was always car sick, and I was always motion sickness. Like, I think I'm the only person that's ever gotten sick on a canoe. I got sick snorkeling, sick in the ocean, just like from waves, swimming pools. I can't, like, any type of just like motion. It was always very disturbing for me.
And did you anticipate it? Like before you would get on a boat or anything, did you think, oh my God, I'm going to get sick?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I did have one really, really bad, like, I tried to go, because I lived in Europe for a long time, and I tried to go on a cruise from Finland to Sweden, and that ended really badly. I was so sick, but I wasn't just like normal seasick. I was shaking and convulsing and having a panic attack. And now that I look back on that event and I look back on everything that I've been through, I'm like, oh, that was a vestibular attack. I was having a vestibular attack and I didn't even know what that was because it wasn't normal.
Right. Well, the reason I ask about the anticipation is because when I was researching this is really, really connected to anxiety.
Yes.
And as you've been talking, I'm thinking, oh my God, the anxiety that would accompany this would be off the chain.
Yes, but I think the anxiety didn't really fully set in for me until I went chronic. Like, because I just didn't know what was going on. I had no idea what was happening to me during like seasickness or motion sickness, and it wasn't all the time. There would be times where I could sit in the back seat of a car and I would be okay for a few hours, and then there were times where I couldn't even do 5 minutes. None of it made really sense to me. I didn't really think much of it. I just thought, oh well, this is just a bad day or a bad moment. And now I look back on it and I'm like, this is all connected. So whenever I did get the diagnosis is when the anxiety started setting in, and I was like, I can't do anything. Like, I can't sit in the car. I can't go outside because the Alice in Wonderland syndrome, they call it derealization, was so bad. It was like the trees were caving in on me. And it was just like I was hallucinating almost, but I wasn't. I was just living my life. I was just trying to live my life.
Is that something that just comes on?
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us an example of what it feels like? That is really.
So the way a lot of people have described it is it's like being on a hallucinogenic drug, like acid, but like a very strong hallucinogenic drug. Like you're tripping on drugs and you feel like you're on drugs. Like your whole perception has just changed, and like you don't feel like anything is real anymore. You feel like, okay, well, here I am, like this is me, but it's actually not me. I'm like up here, like I'm way up here. And it's just this feeling that something is just so off. and it doesn't go away.
Wow.
There's no pill that you can take to make it go away. There's no therapy that you can do to make it go away. It just sort of fades in and out by itself. Now, I have not had an episode with that for a very, very long time.
How long do
But
the
in the beginning,
episodes last?
weeks, months.
Oh my God.
Hmm.
And do
So
you realize
whenever,
what's happening? Or, I mean, in the
I
moment,
did,
you.
I did because the way it all started was I was in my home and I had had like a month of sort of just vague dizziness. And I was very, very scared because it wasn't going away. And it was like my life was normal at the time. Like I was able to do everything. I was able to go outside. I was able to go into stores. I was able to operate normally. I just had this very vague dizziness for like a month. And I got better and it went away, but I was very scared that I had like a brain tumor or that something was very wrong with me. And I had all these MRIs and all these tests done, and they told me I was fine. And then one day I collapsed to the floor, like totally full spinning vertigo on the floor, collapsed. And that's whenever the ambulance came to get me and took me to the emergency room. And it was immediately after that happened was whenever the Alice in Wonderland syndrome started, but didn't stop for quite some time. And it was like I was in a permanent state of this. And I knew what I was very lucky because after I went to the emergency room, I had made an appointment with an ENT. I was living in Charleston, South Carolina at the time. Charleston isn't exactly like a medical hub.
Hmm.
So I was very, very scared that something was severely wrong with me and I wasn't going to be able to get adequate medical care. So I just found an ENT to go to who could rule out the big stuff and maybe like guide me in the right direction. And at this time, I couldn't even walk. I could not walk. I could not get out of bed. I couldn't shower by myself. I couldn't do anything. I made it to my appointment and he did all of these tests on me, a ton of tests. And he came into the room and he said, I know what's wrong with you, but I don't know what to do about it. And I was like, okay, what's going on? And he said, you have vestibular migraine. And that's when I said, no, 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 hold on, sir. I don't think
Wait a
so.
minute, right?
Yeah, wait a minute.
Because you hadn't
No.
had headaches.
Yeah, I hadn't had any headache. He said, you need to find people. You need to go home and you need to find people online or some other way for somebody to help you, people to help you and to give you support and like break this down. And I was like, so the doctor is telling me to go to the Google.
Yeah.
Are you sure? Like,
Hmm.
are you sure about this? And he's like, no, this is the way, like, you need to go see a specialist. It's going to take a very long time for you to get into the specialist because there's only a few in the country. And one of them happened to be in South Carolina. But he said the wait is going to be like, it's going to be really long.
Who are
And
these
it did take,
specialists? Like, what are their names? The
they're
specialists.
called otoneurologists.
Okay.
So you have they're people who deal with inner ear disorders, but also the neurological aspect of inner ear disorders.
Okay.
Or you can go to some neurologists cover this also without having like the specialty in the ENT part. But the guy that I ended up going to was an otoneurologist. Anyways, it took me 7 months to get in with him. So in that time, the day that I got diagnosed, my husband was like, well, what do we do? You know? So I went online that very day. I got home and he put YouTube up on the TV and I just started looking into vestibular migraine and all these people come up and all these people started explaining basically my whole life. And I was like, "Oh, I have to I have to go on Facebook or Instagram. I have to find them. I have to talk to them." And I was like, I'm not giving up. I am not giving up until I figure out how to get a hold of these people. I connected with them. I talked with them. and they broke everything down for me, and they explained it all and told me sort of what to do. They led me in the right direction and, encouraged me to get the help, to get help, because I didn't know, like, if I should see a specialist after I got the diagnosis, and they're like, "No, you need to see the specialist." But they helped me, and they helped me get to, like, where I am now. And it was like finding all the pieces to the puzzle and truly understanding what's going on. And then that's whenever I learned, okay, like, this out of body experience that you're having is normal. If that can be imaginable, like, this is normal.
Right.
Thousands of people going through it,
Wow.
thousands of people. And I was completely floored,
Mm-hmm.
floored that there were people living like this.
Jeez.
And that's when it started to become really scary, because some people had been sick for 5, 6, 7 decades,
Mm.
like decades. Um, so that was eye-opening, and that was scary.
Right.
Um, and I didn't know what to do.
So, and at the same time, you're feeling validated, a little bit of relief.
Yeah.
You found your people, but then you start digging
Mhm.
into the reality of all this.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and so when was that? When did that
That was
happen?
in um that was in the beginning. That was January 2020.
Was that this? Oh, 2020 of
4 years
2020.
ago.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's right. Okay,
almost 5 years ago.
okay. And so over the past 4 years,
Mhm.
do you know why people develop these disorders? Is there a hereditary link or?
Yes, so there is a hereditary link. I didn't my immediate family, nobody in my immediate family was like this. Um, my grandmother on my father's side, she had extreme dizziness, and I didn't know that because she died before I was born, and they told me that she would have debilitating episodes where she would be in bed for long periods of time with dizziness. And then I had a couple of other relatives who had also experienced dizziness. They never told me a diagnosis, because the diagnosis of vestibular migraine and triple PD are all relatively new, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but they didn't diagnose it as that. They just said that they had dizziness. There's a couple of theories of what happens to people. Toxic viral overload is one of them. So Epstein-Barr virus is one theory. So
Okay.
that can be passed down through generations. And then some people are just born this way. And I believe I was born this way. So you have vestibular migraine and Meniere's disease, or any of these things, you have this stuff before you ever even have symptoms, if that makes sense.
So it can probably stay dormant
Oh,
and
yeah.
then something brings it out.
Yes, so you can have a stressful event, you can get sick. So for me, what had happened that month period where I had, like, the vague dizziness, I had gotten really sick, like, violently sick, with, like, really, really bad ear pressure, a really severe sore throat, watering eyes, like, really bad mucus, just everything. I was just randomly sick for one day,
Hmm.
and I woke up and I was completely fine. It was the strangest thing that has ever happened to me. And it was Thanksgiving Day. And I was like, there's something very wrong. Like, I am very ill. Out of the blue, it came on quick and it just left quick. And I believe that that was some kind of, like, virus coming to the surface, whether it was Epstein-Barr or something that we don't even know about. But that's what I believe happened to me. And that caused all of this to come to the surface. And then the collapse that I had, that's what they call, like, a stressful event or a significant event. And that's whenever triple PD sets in. And triple PD, it's a very fancy word, and literally it just means that you have permanent dizziness that lasts for a long period of time, anywhere from like 3 months to years.
That is insane.
Yes, it
So,
is.
when that happened, was that like Thanksgiving of 2019?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so from that November, December leading up to January the 5th,
January.
and then
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
when that was the fallout.
Mm-hmm. That's when it hit rock bottom.
So, like your life leading up to the diagnosis hadn't been really horrible then. It's just it hit and it never
Yes.
stopped.
Yeah. I had normal stress and trauma and everything that you go through in life. There was nothing at the time that was significant enough for me to like have some kind of like panic that would cause this to come to the surface.
When someone tells you over and over again that you can't have what you want, you believe it. And those beliefs, unless they are interrupted, have the power to destroy your life. This book takes you on a journey of self-assessment, self-reflection, and self-empowerment, but it's not a quick fix. It's a playbook to a better life. And if you emulate my spiritual teachings, your life won't look the same 1 year from now. I want you to know that if you want something, you're meant to have it. That burning desire that you've always had is there for a reason. Your intuition tells you that you are supposed to do whatever you want to do, and that's why the burning desire never goes away. You may have shut it out a time or two in your lifetime, but it always comes back. Together, we're going to bring that burning desire to life. You can attract whatever you want, regardless of your past and present circumstances. When we're done with your spiritual transformation, those who have treated you badly will wish they hadn't. Miracles aren't reserved for the saints. We sinners are just as entitled to miracles, so let's go get yours.
One of the things that had really like scared me was that I thought that I had a brain tumor. And whenever I was very young, 16, I was in high school, I had a tumor in my elbow. I was at one point so convinced that I had a brain tumor and that what was causing this.
Well, the
That I
symptoms
had, yeah,
would have been similar.
the same.
Yeah.
I had gone into my doctor's office without an appointment, completely hysterical, crying. And I told her that I had a brain tumor, and I said, "I'm dying. I know I'm dying." I was like, "I have a history of tumor. I know that this is what I have. That you have to help me." And she ordered me an emergency MRI. And it was so like I was so convinced I was dying. I had Whenever I was getting the MRI afterwards, I had said to the technician, I said, "You have to let me look at the images. Like, you have to put it up on the screen. Like, I'm not leaving this." And he, let me do that. He wasn't supposed to do that, but he said, "Fine, come back here and look." And he's like, "This is normal, healthy brain tissue." And I said, "What the fuck?
What the fuck's going on?
Why? How's this happening?"
I mean, again, relief.
Yeah.
But what the hell?
Relief, but what is
Yeah,
this?
right.
And this story is almost identical to everybody that has chronic vestibular migraine. It starts off like this. They have a panic. They think they have MS. They think that they have brain tumor. They think that they're dying, and they get all these tests done, and they're told they're completely normal.
Wow.
And you're like, what?
Then what
So
is
this
happening?
is it? I'm just supposed to do this? And the thing about it is that there is no sort of like standard protocol for dizziness.
Right.
There's no medication there's no dizziness medication. There are medications that are used off label. So there's benzos and there's antidepressants and a host of other things that are used for dizziness. But your regular GP isn't going to give you that because they don't know. So it's very like people ask me, okay, would you rather, like with the migraine stuff, would you rather have migraine pain or would you have migraine dizziness? 110,000%, I rather have migraine pain.
I was going to say, I would take that.
I will take it because I can take a painkiller. I can take something, even if it doesn't take it away completely, at least it lessens it.
Mm-hmm.
When you are in the thick of chronic, debilitating, 24/7 dizziness, there's nothing that takes it away. Absolutely nothing. So you think you're crazy. You're like that this is it. Life life is not worth living at that point because it is with the Alice in Wonderland syndrome, you become sensitive to light, you become sensitive to sound, you become sensitive to even the things that you taste. All of your senses just completely go like we are all going to just cross connect and we are just going to go haywire and your nervous system is just pulsating and on fire. It's terrible. I don't wish it on anybody.
I have a friend, and and she will not care for me talking about this, but I think
Sure.
that I probably owe her some type of an apology because over the years, she said to me,
Yeah.
she'll say, "Well, my vertigo was acting up,"
Mhm.
and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
So with the vertigo, I can't imagine what that would feel like, just spinning and not having any control over that. And I guess you never know how long it's going to last. And I remember her telling me that it went on for 3 days at one point. What do you do? What did you do?
I did nothing.
Oh my
When I
God.
say I did nothing except survive, I just laid there and survived and tried to just like in the beginning, I didn't do anything. I couldn't even watch television cuz like my depth perception was so bad. So I would put on videos on YouTube about vestibular migraine and triple PD and I would just listen to the TV. My husband, before he went to work, would make sandwiches. He would make sandwiches for me and line them up on the bedside table. So everything that I needed for the day was in like I could reach for it because I couldn't get up to walk to the kitchen. I would limit the amount of water I drank during the day so I wouldn't have to get up and go to the bathroom.
Wow.
It was that bad, and it went on it was unrelenting for a long time,
So
a
this was
very long time.
so post diagnosis.
Mhm.
Okay.
This was my life.
This was your life. So you had said you went 2 years without being able to leave your home. Was that
Yep.
this time span?
Yeah. So I would go to doctor's appointments, and I would try to go outside to, like, walk to the mailbox and back because I knew early on that if I don't keep moving, I'm gonna die. I would get up and I would walk. I had this like carpet around my about around my bed and it had like a pattern on it and I would walk the pattern of the carpet. So I would just walk around the carpet. I would just walk around the carpet and be laying for many hours and then I'd get up and I'd walk the carpet. And then when my husband would come home, I'd go to the mailbox and I'd try to walk the mailbox. And then I would come downstairs sometimes and I would try to eat at the dinner table. And that was even hard. I would be like, okay, well, we're going to change rooms today. And now so for today, you're going to be in the living room instead of the bedroom. And now you're going to go to, another bedroom and you're going to be in there for the day. So I would have to like post up for like wherever I wanted to be. And I would sort of like switch around the house, but I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't go into grocery stores. I couldn't do anything. Um,
Working
and
certainly not an option.
working, driving,
Yeah. Completely
nothing.
debilitated.
Completely zero. When I say that there was zero quality of life, I had zero quality of life. And the one of the top doctors in our country wrote a book about vestibular migraine and his experience with people that have vestibular migraine. And he said the only other thing that he has seen that is as debilitating as vestibular migraine is full-blown ALS.
Oh my gosh.
And ALS you die from. And
Yes.
I thought, oh my God, please give me something that has a terminal prognosis to it. I wanted a terminal prognosis. Every time I went to the doctor, I was hoping, I was thinking, okay, today's the day. We're going to get that. We're going to get the news. So we just have to prepare ourselves and it's going to be okay. That never happened. It was just, this is just what it is. This is just, sorry,
Well, I
you
think
know?
I think this is impeccable timing for us to let people know how we met.
Yes.
So I posted a video on social media after actually my stepdaughter is the one that told me about this.
Mm-hmm.
And it is about the Sarco suicide pod in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
And I posted a video about that on social media because I was really disturbed by what
Mm-hmm.
I had learned. And in this day and time, I have a hard time believing anything I read or even see with my own two eyes. It's like, is this real or is this, what is
Oh,
it?
it is.
And so I just started digging into it a little bit because it
Mhm.
just felt like that this Sarco suicide pod was making suicide a little bit too easy for people because I had
Sure.
read that it was free
Mhm.
and that no real medical doctors were involved. I couldn't find anything about accountability. And then I read
Mhm.
somewhere that it was $20, and I thought, this is disturbing. This is disturbing to me. It's like somebody
Yeah.
who has a terminal prognosis. I get that 1000%. But then
Mhm.
you've got somebody like Lil Peep. I don't know if you ever knew who Lil Peep was. He had a death wish. And
Mhm.
and so someone like him, this just I looked at it as just being too risky and too easy. And then
Yeah.
you chimed in on that video
Mhm.
and you caught my eye because you said, hey, I can't remember exactly what you said, but you were like, hey, at one point in my life, dying with dignity was the only thing that gave me any relief or peace.
Mhm.
And I was like, holy shit. And then, we started going back and forth, and I learned about these vestibular disorders. Okay, I get it.
When you have no quality of life
And no
and you
hope.
have, there's no hope. I mean, there is hope now
Mm-hmm.
for me, but there was no hope. And it was so bad. It was so unrelenting. It was exhausting to explain to people what was happening. People thought I was being dramatic. People thought that this wasn't real. No, this was very real. This was my reality. And I thought, I don't want to be a burden. I don't think that this is fair to anybody around me to deal with this. This is terrible. And even at one point, the craziest of the crazy that I did was I had said to my husband, I said, I don't know if I'm ever going to get better. Um, I'll give you money for prostitutes.
Oh, wow.
Uh huh. I thought because
You
I
had
can't.
that level of guilt.
I had that level of guilt. I thought I can't do anything, so I can't hardly do anything. I can't get up to go to the bathroom. So you need to figure this out, or I had even at one point said your ex-girlfriend can move in to the house if you want. And he was like, you've lost it. No, like we're not going to do that. But this was real for me. This
Well,
was very real.
he must be a good man if he didn't take you up on any of that. Because I
No,
know
he
some
did.
men that'd been like, okay.
Okay.
I
And
mean,
we live in
I
Las
gotta find
Vegas
humor
now.
in this
So,
somewhere. It's like he must be a good man. Oh my God, you had
well, he
that
was just
level of guilt. Oh my God. Okay.
and he was like, "What are you talking about? Like, we no." And finally, I said, "I'm ready, and I want to go to Switzerland, and I want to do this. Like, I really, really want to do this. I want to like, let's figure everything out. Like, let's get the affairs in order, and I want you to find." Somebody who is going to be a loving wife and partner to you. I want you to live like to the fullest. Like my husband's a big entrepreneur, and I thought you need to just seek out all these opportunities that you want without worrying about me let's make these arrangements. And it wasn't even an emotional conversation for me at that point. I wasn't crying or anything. I just was very much like I'm done. I'm ready. Like no emotion behind me. Just
Logic.
please. Yeah. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm done. I'm ready to be finished with this. I had researched other places, but Switzerland was my main one that I thought about, like that I wanted. And I had planned out like cremation and all this, just let's get this going. I know people that have these disorders that have committed suicide.
Suicide rates are
There's
pretty high from what I could see.
Yes, they are. They are high
Yeah,
because it becomes
yeah.
unbearable.
There's definitely causation there from what I read
Hmm.
online. Because these disorders, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're not fatal,
No,
but
there's nothing fatal.
there's a high mortality rate because of
Mhm.
suicide.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so there's nothing fatal that is going to happen.
right,
Some people get dementia much, much later in life, but that's pretty much like, I think, the only thing, and that's not even fatal in itself. So there's nothing fatal about it. There's just living in absolute hell
right.
where you're unable to walk and you might be hallucinating and you can't do anything. Like you can't do anything. Um,
What'd your husband say to your idea about
so
Switzerland?
this is when things started to get a little bit strange. My husband is his family, they are Syrian Lebanese and they're very devout Orthodox Christians, and I am not. And he said, okay, he's just said, we're going to hold off on any arrangements to Switzerland. Like, let's just back it up for a second. And he said, can I please bring an Orthodox priest to the house? And I said, "No, I'm not doing that. I don't I'm not a very religious person. Like we're not doing that." And he said, "Please, please let me see if I can just at least find somebody in Charleston, South Carolina that can come to the house." And I thought, "Where are you going to find a Syrian Orthodox priest in the middle of South Carolina? That's just not that's just not happening."
Right.
You know? My husband's in the sound industry and he had done sound for churches for a lot. So we had had the Baptist over and the Methodist, and we had had all these other people, these holy rollers coming over. And I thought, I'm not doing this with any more of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, okay, fine. Please just let me bring this priest over. He found somebody in Charleston. There is one.
Determination.
And yeah. And he came over to the house. It was like a full exorcist was about to happen. He had a cross, full black robe, a Bible, and he had oil from a weeping icon. And I thought, this is where we have now really lost it. This is where we have really, really lost it. And this priest sat me down and started talking to me. And this was probably one of the more enlightening conversations I've ever had in my life, because he had asked me things that I was doing. And I said, well, I'm trying to do meditation and I'm trying to do some. Are you familiar with Wim Hof?
No.
Wim Hof. Wim Hof he does these breathing exercises
Oh, okay.
with cold plunging.
Oh,
And
no. I've never heard of
Oh, yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's a whole thing. I wasn't doing the cold plunging, but I was doing the breathing exercises. And this priest said to me he was doing the Wim Hof method every day and he was doing cold plunges in his house. And and this is a form of meditation. And I thought, okay, well, all right. Well, I'll talk to you about all this. And I told him that I was suicidal and I was ready to die. And he talked to me about that. And he talked to me about how like prayer is actually meditation,
Yeah.
and in the Orthodox religion, the way that they chant is very much a meditation. And so he was sort of cool and like on board with, some of the things that I was into at that time. And he did the prayers and did the cross and he did the oil and all of these things. And I was like, okay, whatever. And then about a month later, things started to turn around for me. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Did I have a connection with the divine? Was it putting the hope in me seeing that this very religious man was also like very down to earth about he was so down to earth about this stuff. It wasn't like
Not your
heaven,
typical,
hell.
right.
Yeah,
Not a
no,
holy
not at
roller.
all.
Not a holy roller.
No, no,
Yeah.
not at all. No, no tent revival here.
Yeah.
So,
Did you do the
so
breathing and the cold plunges?
I did.
Did you do that?
Yeah, I did.
I never heard of like combining those two things, but I mean,
Uh-huh.
I do pranayama, which is breath work. I'm certified in
Yeah.
that by the Chobra
Yeah.
Center, and then I do a cryo chamber 3-4 times a week, which is just a real sophisticated version of the cold plunge.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the goal of those two things, although I don't really do them together per se, but I do them consistently every,
Yeah.
on a daily, weekly basis. And so the goal of those two things is to reduce inflammation in the body. I would think that because I'm connecting dots here. That's why I ask, did you do the breath work in the cold plunge?
I
Because
did.
I'm sure that.
I did showers.
Okay.
I did cold plunging. I did cold shower.
Okay.
And I would do the breath work and I would do meditation, and I would meditation, whether it was like a faith-based meditation or Joe Dispenza. Like it didn't matter. It was just like, as he explained it, it's just putting the mind at rest.
True.
And letting, so he was very like logical about this. So things got better. But what really, really stuck with me, and this is where I think it's going to really resonate with you. I said, I just want to be myself again. He said, well, you're not going to be yourself again because you're a different person. You're never going to be the same. And that's what changed it for me. You are never going to be the same person. You are a different person. You have to start conducting yourself as if you're a different person. Who you were before doesn't exist anymore. You are something different. And that's whenever I was like, I have to get to a point where I am accepting what is happening to me. So this is my life now. This is what I have. This is my prognosis. Okay, I'm not going to die, but this is what it is, and I have to make peace with it. And then I have to accept that I'm a totally new person. And that's not a bad thing because you get to reinvent your life now. You get to be who you really want to be. And that's whenever it changed for me. And that's whenever I started to finally say, okay, like all these drugs, all this medicine, all this stuff, it is what it is. Like it's here to help you. It's not going to cure you, but it's really like the way that you're viewing this and the way like the emotion that you're putting on it and not putting emotion on it. I really got into neuroplasticity. I'm sure you're familiar, and I got involved with these neuroplasticity programs that are designed for people with chronic illness that helps them rewire their brain and helps them change the way that they think about their illness.
So this
And you don't.
priest did mindset work with you. I was not expecting that. Okay, go ahead. I did
No,
not mean to interrupt you. Okay.
Nobody was. No, I wasn't expecting it. Nobody was. You know, you got to think of your life in a different way now. And that's what I did. So I just said, okay, I'm a totally different person. I'm never going to be the same. And in the chronic illness community, there's a huge emphasis on getting to 100%. But what does 100% mean? Because you're always going to have ups and downs in life. You're always going to have hiccups. You're always going to have something that weighs you down in life. And it's how you choose to approach it and the emotion that you put towards it is the determining factor on how it's going to affect you. And that's what I had to learn. And that's like what I had to work on is my mindset to like around this, you know? So my life is different. So I have to start operating different. So where do I start, you know? And I started going outside and I started going on car rides and I started, working with my husband a little more. I started walking the dogs, started going to the mailbox, so taking the trash out, cooking. The big moment for me was I was in my kitchen and I was looking and I was like, everything is so dirty. There was scuff marks on the cabinets and things, and I was like, I'm gonna do this right now. Like, I'm going to fill up a bowl of water and I'm going to do this. And I sat on the floor and I did it. And then I was like, okay, so I did that. So now I'm gonna wake up every single day and I'm gonna put clothes on, like, not because at one point I had daytime pajamas and nighttime pajamas, and I would just go between the two because I never actually put clothes on. I was like, I'm gonna wake up every day and I'm gonna put on a bra and I'm gonna put makeup on and I'm gonna do my hair. And even if I have to sit on the floor and it takes me 3 hours, I'm gonna do this every day and just sit in the house if that's just what it is. So I started getting dressed every day and I started getting, putting makeup on and doing something, just anything to feel normal. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to start cooking dinner for my husband at least once a week, twice a week. And he can be there so I don't like hurt myself or anything. So I started doing that. And then over time, it just got easier and easier and easier. And then I started going grocery shopping and going to restaurants and I started, doing normal life stuff, things that I had taken for granted for my whole life that I could just do with ease were like blessings to me every day. Going to the grocery store actually put me in tears because I was like, I'm doing this. I'm actually doing this. I thought I would never be here again. And I did it. And we moved all the way from Charleston to Las Vegas. And my husband had, like, even he made massive improvements in his life. He doesn't drink alcohol to the level that he did before. He is really, really pursuing all of his endeavors, like all of these things that he wants to with his businesses and his companies. And he's really going for it. And I really think that this situation changed our life so much and made us appreciate life on a different level. And I actually like my life better now than I did before I got sick. To what I was trying to go back to, what I was wanting so bad to like be this person that I was once before. I actually like who I am better now. Now that I accepted I am a different person. If you can believe that.
I
Even
believe
though
it. I believe it 1,000%. When someone tells you over and over again that you can't have what you want, you believe it. And those beliefs, unless they are interrupted, have the power to destroy your life. This book takes you on a journey of self-assessment, self-reflection, and self-empowerment, but it's not a quick fix. It's a playbook to a better life. And if you emulate my spiritual teachings, your life won't look the same 1 year from now. I want you to know that if you want something, you're meant to have it. That burning desire that you've always had is there for a reason. Your intuition tells you that you are supposed to do whatever you want to do, and that's why the burning desire never goes away. You may have shut it out a time or two in your lifetime, but it always comes back. Together, we're going to bring that burning desire to life. You can attract whatever you want, regardless of your past and present circumstances. When we're done with your spiritual transformation, those who have treated you badly will wish they hadn't. Miracles aren't reserved for the saints. We sinners are just as entitled to miracles, so let's go get yours. The moment you were willing to let go of that old identity, things changed. Like almost the moment from
almost,
if I've heard you right. And so many people don't ever get better. And I'm not just talking about sickness. I mean, I'm talking about being stuck in poverty. I'm talking about just being stuck in chaos and drama. because you're going to end up being sick if you stay in those situations. But so
Yes.
many people are just holding on to that old identity with a death grip, and it means nothing. If you're not happy and you don't feel well and you're hanging on to some old identity, all that identity is just a big old bunch of bad habits and bad people. That's
Yep.
all it is. And
Yep.
so, yeah, I somehow knew that you were going to say that when you said it. It makes
Yeah.
so much sense. And it's
Hmm.
like, what? I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that this is absolutely tied to your big dharma. I mean, I feel like that this is really tied to your life purpose. When did you do the 2 year study with, so just so our listeners know, she did a 2 year study with three of the most prestigious institutions in the world. It was Harvard, Johns Hopkins, and the Mayo Clinic,
Amongst others.
amongst,
So
okay,
what it was is we a bunch of doctors got together to try to improve how dizzy patients are handled in the emergency room. And I was a person that had had a particularly bad experience in the emergency room because I went to the emergency room and they told me I was fine and I couldn't even walk. I couldn't even walk out of the building. On my way to the emergency room, I had had a complete gap in my memory. Like I had completely lost my memory. So I had had a really bad experience. There is a nonprofit organization called Veda, and they're the ones that help people with vestibular disorders. And they had volunteered me for this study. And I took part in this with two other dizzy patients, like patients that had had dizziness. And I worked on this protocol for 2 years on how to help dizzy patients in the emergency room. The most interesting thing that came out of that was Dr. Jonathan Edlow, who is the director of emergency medicine at Harvard University, said to me in the middle of the study, he said, I could go to school for 40 more years and I will never know what it's like to be you. He said, what you go through is so important. And your experience is so much more important than anything that I can ever teach. And that was a big, big moment for me. And I had these other people, from Johns Hopkins and like top neurologists from around the country. I
right.
mean, and these greatest teaching institutions in the world saying to me that, your experience means so much because no matter how long I go to school, how many fellowships I go on, how many lectures I sit in on, I will never know what it's like to be you.
No, there's a whole lot of wisdom. I mean, even though you aren't a medical doctor, the wisdom that you have, oh my God, it's invaluable.
It's invaluable.
Nobody could have it unless they live it.
Yeah.
It's just like a man trying to empathize with what it's like to have a menstrual
Be a
cycle.
woman. Yeah.
There's no way they
Yeah.
could know. And so,
Well,
yeah, that's brilliant what he told you, and it's so true. I mean, you've got wisdom
it
that
is.
not everybody has, and it benefits
Absolutely.
people. This is
And I
incredible.
learned a lot through that. Also, I learned a lot about, my disorder and, what people go through. And the first doctor that I went to, the one in Charleston that had originally diagnosed me, he said to me, he's like, you got to go on Google, you got to go on social media, you need to start finding people. He said, but in a few years, you're going to know more about this than than I will.
Hmm.
And well, he didn't really know much anyway. He knew what to do,
Right.
but he's just this old Southern small man. He wore a bow tie, and when he was trying to pick out my medication, he had this little tiny book from like the 1950s or something. And he's looking at this little prescription book, and he's like, "Okay, yeah, we're gonna try this one right here." I thought, "Are you sure? Like, is this
Right.
your reference? Okay, well,
Right. Right.
we'll see what happens." But
Right.
whenever my articles came out, like with the Daily Mail and the New York Post and everything, and I sent it to him because I said, look at where I am now. And he wrote me back and he's like, "I've never been more proud of a patient." He said, "You were the most severe patient I had ever had. You were in the most severe state I've ever seen of anybody, but you've come the furthest of anybody that I've dealt with." And I thought, it's a bold statement. It's a big statement,
It's a
but it
big
made me feel,
statement.
yeah.
Huge compliment.
My specialist, who he's actually Lebanese Syrian also. I had sent him all of the work and he had seen my name come up on the protocol that had been written over the past 2 years because it was given out to all of the doctors, and he saw my name on it. And he was like, he's like, I'm taken aback at how far you've come, at how well you've done. And that's and that's a motivator in itself, to see these people who are like, you were one of the more severe situations I've ever seen, and you've managed to get yourself out of this and live a life that even people who are healthy can only dream of.
Now, there's a lot of, I'm sure that your confidence about everything is just next level, because if you can recover from everything that you went through, well, there's nothing you can't do.
No.
Period.
And actually, today is a big day for that, because normally, like, if I got any kind of like bad medical news or anything, my life was over.
Right.
And I actually got a call this morning that I have skin cancer.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm confident I'm fine. I'm confident I'm fine. I'm 100%, like, you can see it right here. I got it.
So,
They
yeah.
did a biopsy,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, like, maybe I should look at this. And I had talked before that even if I got a terminal diagnosis for something, I am confident that I will be okay. And that's like, and today was such a big moment for me because I did get this call, and it's a little scary. It's not like a chemotherapy, cancer thing. Like, I don't have to go to an oncologist or anything like that. This is just, like, they're just going to take it off and monitor the situation. But before, I would have been hysterical and thought I was dying. Now,
yeah,
yeah,
I've been through the same thing, by the way.
Yeah.
I never had anything come back melanoma, but I've had, I think, 29, maybe 29 spots removed, and 3 of those came back as severe abnormalities, which means it's got a 99% chance of turning into melanoma. And so they just got those out. And everything was fine. I have no doubt that you're going to be fine. And I'm not a medical doctor, period, but I am very qualified to say what I'm getting ready to say. When you go through what you've gone through, all those emotions that you felt for so long, there's no way that those emotions will not manifest into some type of physical illness somewhere. And this appearing, I just instinctively feel like it may not even be a bump in the road.
It's not.
Yeah.
There's nothing. They could diagnose me with a more serious cancer right now, and it's not even going to really be a bump in the road for me because I know how to deal with this. There is nothing that can come down my path that I feel is going to stop me. There's nothing. I know what to do now. I'm confident in everything, and it's totally changed the way that I look at the world, the way that I experience the world, the way that I look at every person in my life. It's like an awakening almost. It's almost as if there was an intervention in my life that disrupted the path that I was on so I could become the person that I needed to be.
Yeah.
And there was no other way to do it because I was being, you're stubborn, you're set in your ways. And it's like, okay, well, no, you need to change. And this is your opportunity to change. And you need to look at this as an opportunity to change instead of looking at this as your life is over, because you can end your life anytime you want. Now, it's easy.
Have you heard about Van Gogh? That it's believed that this is why he committed suicide? Because he had Meniere's disease?
I believe he was experiencing psychosis. Lewis Carroll, who wrote Alice in Wonderland, who one of the symptoms of this disease is named after, they believe that he had a vestibular disorder also, which caused him to have all of these very strange thoughts, all of these very strange experiences. What I am going to say about that is both of these people are men. This disease affects women more than it does men. And I think the reason that we don't hear about women in history going through this is because it was called a long time ago floating women's syndrome. And women would be locked into mental institutions and given various shock therapy, spinal taps, lobotomies, exorcisms was a big thing. Have you ever heard of a man having an exorcism?
Actually, no, I have not.
Exactly, because exorcisms are very much tied to psychosis and to chaos, that they were performing exorcisms on women who were going through this because they didn't know what it was. So so physically you're fine. You're
Mm-hmm.
fine. There's nothing physically wrong with you except you have a little something in here going on inside your ear, and the way the brain waves between your ears and your brain are totally crossed and they're not adding up, and that makes it so your eyes, your ears, your brain, and your legs don't work. All right. And it causes you to have chaos and feel psychosis, literally. And that's where the Alice in Wonderland syndrome and all of that stuff comes into play. So women were treated as if they were insane. But we hear about these men that have gone through this, and they're heroes, and they are beloved people from history.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that does not surprise me at all. I mean, my great grandmother, and I talk about her in my book. They pretty much just kept her hidden away from society because she had serious mental issues and their theory was that she went swimming in cold water when she was on her period, and
Oh my
and
God.
that's what caused her to go crazy. And they believed that, and this was, in a rural area in Appalachia, and she had these really really severe manic episodes, and she would hallucinate, and I mean she really
Mhm.
she pulled some stunts, and she was a complete embarrassment, and mainly because her husband was like one of the most high profile people in the whole state. He was like this
Wow.
shark attorney and a state senator, and so she was just tucked away.
Mhm.
And so it's been going on with women for a long time, and that
Uh-huh.
story does not surprise me. And before, I won't get off on a tangent about this, I'll just make one
Sure.
comment. But before medical professionals and just really people in general were in the know about hormones,
Yes.
that impacts everything. And
Mhm.
so women have really got the shaft on that
Yeah.
deal. Yeah, women have been through it,
Mhm.
and your courage is it's inspiring, it's contagious, and
Mhm.
you absolutely will help so many people. And I just want to close with asking you, if somebody watches this and they
Mhm.
suspect that they have a vestibular disorder,
Mhm.
what are some do's and don'ts? I mean, what advice would you like to offer anybody that listens to this and
Um,
says, "Oh my God, that might be going on with me"?
don't spend 2 years in your house like I did. Get out and get moving as soon as possible, even if you have to, like I did, walk the carpet. You walk the carpet. You walk the lines on the tile on your floor or the whatever. Keep moving, even if it's uncomfortable, because it's gonna be painful. Not painful, but it's gonna be very, very uncomfortable, and you're not gonna feel good. And then try to find a community of people that can help you. So if you go onto social media, you go on there and you can find people. There's a woman who's become a very dear friend of mine, and her name is the Dizzy Cook. And she makes dizzy-friendly recipes, because we have a lot of food. There's, like, a lot of stuff that goes on with, like, food and, like, high, like, histamine and tyramine foods that can, like, cause inflammation. So she has 2 books actually, um, that help people get on track with eating, about dizzy-friendly recipes and eating, so you can, like, lower there's, like, a whole migraine threshold thing, and, she teaches you how to bring your migraine threshold down and teaches you how to do that through food.
Well, I'll link
And
her information to this podcast episode for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
her name is Alicia. She's a dear friend of mine now, and, so she's a very good resource. She doesn't talk just about food, but she talks about medication options. She talks about different therapies. So there's something called vestibular rehabilitation therapy that teaches you everything, like how to walk, how to move your body, how to do everything again. And so she covers a lot of that. And then finding a specialist. So finding somebody who really has the knowledge of vestibular disorders and trying to get a proper diagnosis so you know sort of like how to treat it. But I think the first step is really like what I did was go on to social media, there's a ton of podcasts from people who have vestibular disorders, and they've done a lot of podcasting about how to get better and how, like, steps you can take. So that's where you go. You start searching and searching, and also knowing that the doctors are going to help you only to a certain extent. So, like with medication, for me, the medication, it kind of did something, but the best way that I can explain it is you're trying to find a medication that's going to lower your symptoms just enough for you to be able to help yourself. And that's what my doctor told me. You got to be able to help yourself. So you got to get up, you got to get dressed, you got to put your makeup on, you got to go outside for walks. You need to try reading again. You need to try you got to start. You got to help yourself. And whether you need to see a therapist, a psychiatrist, or a guru, a religious figure, anybody that can help you sort of like get the emotional part of it and the anxiety part of it under control, will help you in the long run, because the anxiety and the panic takes over. Because
I have no doubt.
I spent at least 3 months straight crying every single day, crying, weeping, and that doesn't help. It's good to like sit with the emotion, recognize the emotion, get it out, and move on in a healthy way,
Right.
So
this has been incredible and so educational for me, because again, and I'm gonna call my friend and be like, listen, I didn't mean to like downplay when you mentioned your vertigo, but my dumb ass didn't know what it was, and so
yeah, certainly.
I mean, I just thought it was like episodes, like you might have to stop what you're doing because you got a little dizzy, and then I start reading into this, and I'm like, oh my God, it's really
debilitating.
Well, of course it is, and would lead to so many other things. And that's really, really, really why I wanted you to come on the show, and I'm so glad that you did.
Well, it's a huge honor.
Yeah,
it's a massive
you.
honor. I have followed you for a very long time, and even in my worst days, I was listening to what you were saying.
Oh my God, really?
Yes, of
course.
Oh
my goodness, that is
in
really.
my worst days, I would just sit and I would just listen, and I would just listen, and I would be like, okay, she's been through the really hard times. Like, we just gotta, the information, even if you're not really like thinking much about it or putting anything into play, just get the information in the brain.
Yeah.
It's like nutrition. Get the nutrition in the body.
Yeah.
Yeah. So get the information in the brain, and it'll start doing something.
Well, I'm so glad that you shared that with me, and this is just a prime example of why I love social media. It can be a really nasty place to be, but all in all, if it weren't for the social media platforms, and I would have never met you. And I really hope that we're able to keep in touch
Of
And
course.
I'll always
It's
share
fun.
your information because I'm
Thank
here to
you.
help people heal, and I know that
Yes.
so much wisdom has come out of this episode, and people are definitely going to
Yeah.
benefit from it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
The Thought Snob podcast with Paula Swope has been brought to you by Thought Snob Media in association with Special Purpose Studios. All production, mixing, and sound engineering by me, Will Swope. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please take a few seconds to give us 5 stars and leave a review. See you on the next Thought Snob podcast with Paula Swope.